Have you ever looked at your life and thought, why does everything have to be so difficult? You solve one problem and another one appears. You finally get the job you wanted, and suddenly you have new responsibilities. You start making money and now you have bills, family expectations, and bigger goals. You fix one relationship and another relationship becomes complicated. You finally feel peaceful. And then life surprises you again. It can feel like you're constantly climbing a mountain that never ends. And maybe you've secretly wondered, when will life finally become easy? When will I have enough money? When will I stop worrying? When will I finally feel confident? When will everything fall into place? But what if you're asking the wrong question? What if life was never designed to become completely easy? What if the goal isn't to create a life without problems, but to become strong enough to handle the problems that come with life? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Life is tough, and pretending otherwise will only make you more frustrated. But understanding this truth can completely change the way you live. Psychologists describe resilience as the ability to adapt to difficult or challenging experiences, and research shows that resilience isn't simply something you're born with. It can be developed through the way you think, the way you respond, your relationships, and the coping strategies you build. So today, let's talk about something nobody really wants to hear. Why life never gets easier. Why new problems keep appearing. Why success doesn't eliminate struggle. And most importantly, how to become the kind of person who can handle life, even when life gets hard. Part 1: The problem with expecting life to become easy. When we're young, many of us imagine adulthood differently. We think, once I'm older, I'll have everything figured out. You imagine having your own money, your own home, your own freedom, your own decisions. And you assume that one day, you'll reach a point where everything becomes peaceful. But then you grow up, and you discover something strange. The problems don't disappear. They change. When you're young, you might worry about exams. Later, you worry about your career. Then money. Then relationships. Then health. Then family. Then responsibilities. Then the future. You don't necessarily get fewer problems. You get different problems. And this is where many people become disappointed with life. They think, I must be doing something wrong. But sometimes, nothing is wrong. You're simply experiencing life. Think about a person who goes to the gym. They don't exercise because they want their muscles to experience zero resistance. They exercise because resistance is what makes the body adapt. The same principle applies to life. Challenges create pressure. Pressure forces adaptation. Adaptation creates strength. And strength makes you capable of handling challenges that once seemed impossible. So the goal isn't, make my life easier. The better goal is, make myself stronger. Part 2: When one problem disappears, another one appears. Imagine someone earning very little money. Their biggest problem is paying their bills. They think, if I could just earn more, my problems would disappear. Eventually, they get a better job. Their income increases. For a while, life feels easier. But now something changes. Their lifestyle becomes more expensive. Their responsibilities increase. Maybe they have a family. Maybe they take a loan. Maybe they start comparing themselves to people who earn even more. Suddenly, the person who wanted more money is stressed about money again. This doesn't mean success is useless. It means success doesn't eliminate the human tendency to adapt. You reach one level, and your mind starts looking at the next level. That's why happiness based entirely on once I get there can become a trap. Once I get a job, I'll be happy. Once I make enough money, I'll be happy. Once I find the right person, I'll be happy. Once I become successful, I'll finally relax. But when you arrive, there's another mountain. And another. And another. This doesn't mean you should stop having goals. It means you should stop believing that the next achievement will permanently remove difficulty from your life. Goals give your life direction. They don't give you immunity from problems. Part 3: Life isn't punishing you. Sometimes when something goes wrong, we immediately ask, why me? Why am I struggling? Why did this happen to me? Why is everyone else moving forward while I'm stuck? But consider another possibility. Maybe life isn't personally attacking you. Maybe life simply doesn't promise fairness. People get rejected. Businesses fail. Relationships end. Plans collapse. People make mistakes. Unexpected things happen. And sometimes, you do everything right and things still don't work. That's one of the hardest lessons of adulthood. Effort does not guarantee a specific outcome. You can prepare carefully and still fail. You can love someone deeply and still lose them. You can work hard and still be overlooked. You can make good decisions and still experience bad circumstances. But that doesn't mean your effort was meaningless. It means you're living in a world where you control your actions. But not every result. And understanding that difference is powerful. Part 4: What you can actually control. There are things you cannot control. You cannot control what other people think. You cannot control whether everyone likes you. You cannot control the past. You cannot control every unexpected event. You cannot control the economy. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control whether someone stays in your life forever. But there is something you can work on. Your response. You can control whether you get back up. You can control whether you learn. You can control whether you keep your promises to yourself. You can control whether you ask for help. You can control what you do with the next hour. And this distinction can save you enormous emotional energy. Because if you spend your life trying to control uncontrollable things, you will constantly feel powerless. But when you focus on what is within your influence, you begin to regain control. The American Psychological Association emphasizes that resilience involves behaviors, thoughts, and actions that can be learned and developed. In other words, you don't have to wait for life to become easier. You can become better at handling life. Part 5: Stop comparing your Chapter 1 to someone else's Chapter 20. Another reason life feels harder than it actually is. Comparison. You look at someone online. They have money, a beautiful house, a successful career, a relationship, a perfect body, amazing vacations. And you look at your own life and think, what's wrong with me? But remember, you're looking at their highlight reel. You're comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's edited presentation. And even if their success is completely real, you still don't know what problems they carry. The person you envy may be worried about losing everything. The successful entrepreneur may be exhausted. The person with millions may feel lonely. The person in a relationship may secretly be struggling. The person who looks confident may be fighting insecurity. Everyone carries something. That's why comparison can be so destructive. You don't need someone else's life. You need to build your life. Your path. Your pace. Your priorities. Your definition of success. Because if you spend your entire life chasing someone else's version of happiness, you may reach the finish line and discover that it was never your race. Part 6: Hard times are not always signs to quit. There is a difference between suffering that you should escape and difficulty that you need to move through. If you're in an abusive situation, dangerous environment, or destructive relationship, be stronger is not the answer. Sometimes strength means leaving. Sometimes strength means asking for help. Sometimes strength means admitting, I cannot handle this alone. Resilience doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means adapting intelligently. The American Psychological Association notes that resilient people can experience significant emotional pain and distress. Resilience does not mean being unaffected by difficulty. Read that again mentally. Being strong doesn't mean you don't hurt. You can be strong and still cry. You can be strong and still feel afraid. You can be strong and still need help. You can be strong and still have terrible days. Strength isn't the absence of emotion. Strength is refusing to let one difficult chapter define the entire story. Part 7: The people who seem strong have also been through something. Sometimes we look at strong people and think, they were just born strong. But strength is often built quietly. It's built through disappointment, through rejection, through failure, through responsibility, through uncertainty, through moments when nobody was coming to rescue you. Think about a tree. A tree that has never experienced wind may look healthy, but the wind forces it to develop strength. Life can be like that. Every challenge doesn't automatically make you stronger, but the way you respond to challenges can develop qualities you didn't have before. Patience, discipline, confidence, emotional control, courage, wisdom, perspective. Researcher George Bonanno has studied how people respond to loss and adversity and emphasizes that human beings have a remarkable capacity to adapt. Resilience is not one fixed response. People can respond to adversity in different ways and can develop flexibility in how they cope. That's important, because maybe your difficult period isn't proof that you're broken. Maybe it's showing you abilities you haven't had to develop before. Part 8: The question that changes everything. Instead of asking, "Why is my life so hard?" try asking, "What is this situation asking me to become?" If money is difficult, maybe it's asking you to become more disciplined. If you're rejected, maybe it's asking you to become more confident. If you're failing, maybe it's asking you to become more patient. If you're alone, maybe it's asking you to become comfortable with yourself. If you're overwhelmed, maybe it's asking you to simplify. If your plan failed, maybe it's asking you to become adaptable. This doesn't mean every painful event has some magical reason. Sometimes bad things simply happen. We shouldn't romanticize suffering. You don't need to pretend that pain is beautiful. But when difficulty arrives, you can still decide what you will do with it. That's where your power begins. Part 9: VIKTORFRENKL and the Power of Meaning. One of the most powerful examples comes from Viktor Frankl, an Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. Frankl endured unimaginable suffering in Nazi concentration camps. After the war, he wrote Man's Search for Meaning, exploring how people can continue living when circumstances become incredibly painful. One idea associated with his work is that human beings can endure extraordinary difficulty when they have a reason to continue. Frankl famously quoted Nietzsche, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Think about that. Your why doesn't have to be enormous. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's becoming the person you know you can become. Maybe it's creating something meaningful. Maybe it's helping others. Maybe it's learning. Maybe it's simply refusing to give up on the person you could become. When you have a reason, difficulty feels different. The mountain is still there, but now you know why you're climbing. And that changes everything. Part 10: Stop waiting for the perfect life. There is another trap that keeps people unhappy. Waiting. Waiting for Monday. Waiting for next month. Waiting for more money. Waiting for confidence. Waiting for motivation. Waiting until life becomes less complicated. But life may never give you perfect conditions. There will always be something. A bill. A deadline. A responsibility. A fear. A difficult person. An uncertain future. So if you wait for a completely problem-free life before you allow yourself to live, you might wait forever. Instead, learn to build small moments of peace inside an imperfect life. Take the walk. Call someone you love. Work toward your goal. Enjoy your meal. Listen to music. Learn something. Sit quietly. Laugh. Rest. Be grateful. You don't need a perfect life to experience a meaningful moment. Part 11: Make your life harder in the right way. Here's something interesting. If life is going to be difficult anyway, choose some difficulties yourself. Exercise when you don't feel like exercising. Learn a skill when you're tempted to scroll. Save money instead of spending everything. Wake up and do the work. Have the uncomfortable conversation. Practice speaking even when you make mistakes. Read when entertainment is easier. Keep promises to yourself. Why? Because voluntary difficulty can prepare you for involuntary difficulty. When you train yourself to do uncomfortable things, ordinary problems become easier to handle. You're teaching your brain, "I can do difficult things." And every time you prove that to yourself, your confidence grows. Not because you told yourself you're powerful, but because you have evidence. You did the hard thing. You survived the uncomfortable moment. You kept going. That's real confidence. Part 12. Don't build a life that only works when everything goes well. Imagine building a house that looks beautiful, but collapses when there's a storm. That's not strength. It's preparation for perfect weather. The same thing can happen with our lives. If your emotional stability depends on everything going according to plan, you will always be fragile. A stronger approach is to build a life that can handle bad days. Have people you trust. Take care of your body. Protect your sleep. Develop useful skills. Manage your money responsibly. Learn how to calm yourself. Have meaningful goals. Create routines. And most importantly, develop the ability to say, "This is difficult, but I can handle the next step." Not the next 10 years. Not your entire future. Just the next step. Part 13. You don't have to solve your whole life today. Sometimes the future feels overwhelming because we're trying to solve everything at once. What will happen to my career? Will I ever become successful? Will I have enough money? Will I find the right person? Will my life work out? These questions can become mentally exhausting. But your life isn't lived 10 years from now. It's lived today. So ask a smaller question. What can I do today? Can you learn for 30 minutes? Can you exercise? Can you apply for one opportunity? Can you save a little money? Can you apologize? Can you make one important phone call? Can you practice your English? Can you work on your business? Can you clean your room? Can you simply get out of bed and start? Small actions look insignificant until they compound. You don't build a strong life in one dramatic moment. You build it through hundreds of ordinary decisions. Part 14. Life may not get easier, but you can get wiser. Think about the problems you had 5 years ago. Some of them probably felt enormous. Today you might look back and think, how was I so stressed about that? Why? Because you've changed. The problem didn't necessarily become smaller. You became bigger than the problem. And that is one of the most beautiful things about growing up. You develop perspective. You learn what deserves your attention. You learn what doesn't. You become less desperate for everyone's approval. You become more comfortable with uncertainty. You stop expecting every day to be perfect. You learn to recover faster. And slowly. Life doesn't necessarily become easier. But you become more capable. That's the difference. Part 15. Your current struggle is not your final identity. Maybe you're struggling right now. Maybe you're behind. Maybe you're unemployed. Maybe you're broke. Maybe you failed. Maybe you're lonely. Maybe you've lost confidence. Maybe you're confused about what you're doing with your life. Please remember this. Your current situation is a chapter, not your identity. A difficult season can last months, sometimes years. But a season is still a season. Don't make a permanent conclusion about yourself based on a temporary chapter. Don't say, "I'm a failure." Say, "I failed." There's a huge difference. "I am broke" is different from, "I'm going through financial difficulty." "I am weak" is different from, "I am learning how to become stronger." "I am lost" is different from, "I haven't found my direction yet." Your language shapes how you see your situation. And your interpretation influences what you do next. Part 16. Acceptance is not giving up. Acceptance is often misunderstood. People hear "accept reality" and think it means, stop trying. No. Acceptance means, stop fighting reality long enough to see it clearly. If something already happened, accept that it happened. Then ask, what can I do now? You lost the job. Okay. What now? The relationship ended. Okay. What now? The plan failed. Okay. What now? You made a mistake. Okay. What now? Acceptance moves you from resistance to action. You can't change yesterday, but you can influence today. And today can influence tomorrow. Part 17. The goal isn't a life without pain. A meaningful life will contain pain. It will contain disappointment. It will contain uncertainty. It will contain endings. But it can also contain love, friendship, growth, achievement, laughter, curiosity, adventure, peace, purpose, and meaning. The goal isn't to eliminate every painful experience. The goal is to build a life that is meaningful enough to be worth the difficulty. That's a very different mindset. You're not saying, I hope nothing bad ever happens. You're saying, whatever happens, I want to become someone capable of facing it. That's strength. Part 18. So, why does life never get easier? Because life keeps changing. Your responsibilities change. Your goals change. Your relationships change. Your body changes. Your priorities change. The world changes. And with every new stage comes a new set of challenges. But here's the good news. You change too. The person who struggles today isn't necessarily the person who will face tomorrow's problems. You learn. You adapt. You recover. You become wiser. You become stronger. You discover what actually matters. And eventually, you look back at the person you used to be and realize, I didn't think I could survive that. But you did. Maybe not perfectly. Maybe you made mistakes. Maybe you cried. Maybe you wanted to quit. But you kept moving. And that matters. Final message: life is tough, but so are you. So if life feels difficult right now, don't automatically assume that you're failing. Maybe you're simply in a difficult chapter. Don't ask, when will life finally become easy? Ask, how can I become stronger, wiser, calmer, and more capable? Don't ask, why does this keep happening to me? Ask, what can I learn from this? Don't ask, when will all my problems disappear? Ask, what is the next thing I can do? And don't wait for a perfect future before you start appreciating the life you have today. Because there may never be a day when everything is perfect. There will always be something to solve, something to improve, something to learn, something to worry about, something unexpected. That's life. Life is tough. But that doesn't mean life is hopeless. It means you need resilience. You need purpose. You need people. You need patience. You need discipline. And sometimes, you simply need to keep going. Not forever. Just today. Then tomorrow. Do it again. Remember what the American Psychological Association says about resilience. It isn't about never experiencing distress. It's about adapting, recovering, and continuing forward through difficult circumstances. And perhaps the most important lesson is this. You don't need a life without storms. You need to learn how to walk through the rain. You don't need every road to be easy. You need stronger legs. You don't need every problem to disappear. You need greater capacity. You don't need certainty about the future. You need courage for the next step. So when life gets hard again, and it will, take a breath. Look at the situation honestly. Do what you can. Ask for help when you need it. Learn what the experience has to teach you. And keep moving. Because one day, you'll look back at the version of yourself who thought they couldn't handle it. And you'll realize something. You were stronger than you thought. Life never promised to be easy. But maybe it was never supposed to. Maybe the real goal was never to create a life where nothing hurts. Maybe the goal was to create a person who can face life with courage, with meaning, with patience, with strength, and with the quiet belief that no matter how difficult today becomes, there is still a next step. And as long as there is a next step, your story isn't over.